Welcome on in. It is countdown to kickoff with the New York Cosmos here on Morning Kickaround. And as the graphic said, it is 54 days until the new generation of the New York Cosmos hits the field. And we want to know what they will look like and how they got to that look. And to detail the path to that 2026 look, we now welcome kit designer Mark Jenkinson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, good morning.
Good to have you, Mark. Appreciate you coming on and joining us to walk us through the process here. Mark and I had a little bit of a back and forth in the email, and the guys over the Cosmos, Eric Stover and Diego, they were saying, maybe we talk about the team on the field. And Mark was like, yeah, focus on that. And I was like, no. Super important. Everybody loves a kit, Mark. You come on, this. This is part of our culture. We live and die with what our teams look like on the field. So I'm fascinated to get into this with you. First of all, how did you end up doing this for the New York Cosmos, this new edition of the New York Cosmos?
Okay, so Eric reached out to Sean Francis, Asbury Park
That's
FC.
My guy. That's my guy.
Yeah. I've known Sean for 26 years since he came over on Boonek to London. And he ended up in the architects I was working in at the time. And through him, he would come out on a Friday night, bring the people he was rooming with out with him. I ended up marrying one of his roommates 6 years later. And that's how I ended up in Philadelphia. Right.
Okay.
So he was asked by Eric because they had connections through MLS Insider and Red Bull. And he was asked by Eric to get involved with the branding aspect of the project. And he said, I know a guy. So as Eric had said, I know a guy. Sean said, I know a guy. So he brought me in. And he was very vague at first. And he kept saying, I've got this job for you. You're going to be perfect for it. You're going to love it. It's going to be everything you've ever, all of this sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, what is it? He goes, can't tell you. And so when the paperwork finally dropped, I was like, oh, my God. Because I grew up in the northwest of England, right? So seeing the Cosmos in the pages of Shoot magazine in the late 70s and the early 80s was huge. It was so glamorous. The American way of life in those days for us we're going through the period of the, Thatcher, and stuff like that. We had the Toxteth riots in Liverpool. We had the miners' strikes. We had Billy Elliot dancing. All of that sort of stuff was going on. And then we're looking at these things. I've got a Suicidal Tendencies album in one end with, palm trees and the white vests and stuff and the bandanas. And we're like, that's a world away from the way we look, the way we live. And then I got the Cosmos with all of the celebrities and all the razzmatazz and the glitz that went with it. And it was just like, it was kind of entrancing looking at the pictures. Because we all know what Anfield looked like. We know what Goodison looked like. We know what the other stadiums look like. But then seeing this was just like a whole different world. At that point, we hadn't even got the NFL in England. That didn't come over till a little bit later. So when this arrived, it was like a complete grail job. I'm like, yes, I need this. I want this. Not that I need it. There's plenty of other designers out there, but it's like, I want this.
A little bit of pressure then. A little bit of pressure, Mark.
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I talked about when we sat down for the first meeting is responsibility. We've got to have kid gloves here, but we also, we don't want to go in and we don't want to trample all over the legacy. We don't want to do something that's completely different because, when you go online, concept designers are 10 a penny. They're everywhere. Right. So we see plenty of people with their ideas of what the Cosmos should be rebranded as and things like that. And, during my research, I saw a lot of that stuff. And that's great if you want to do that kind of thing. But when you're faced with it, reality on your desk, the actual brand equity in that mark is so strong globally that we can't really do, we were refining it. We were just bringing it up to modern standards because, with the typeface and the way it was drawn, because in those days things were drawn and then used enlarges and then used photo ready artwork and bromides and rubyliths and all of that kind of stuff, bringing it and modernizing it, especially with the digital first kind of approach these days, which I know not everybody's on board with blending. And, and that was a real important thing to try and do that not change so much of what we've done or what has been done in the past, evolve it, and make sure that for modern channels, it translates really well.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and plus behind that's just the logo. Behind all that is the whole branding exercise, which is what Eric's talking about with the community aspect. And, so we were very, very careful with what we did in terms of setting the line in the sand and the kind of the day zero kind of thing, or the year zero, or whatever you want to call it, of how we can use local artists to bring the personality into the work that's going on with the Cosmos brand, because it is a very, very new approach that Eric's proposing in terms of the whole community aspect in Patterson. So yeah, these are just the slides that we went through, some of the things. I mean, you'll see on one of the slides, it's a 50-page manual with well, the actual brand side of it is very, it's like 20 pages. It's here's your colors, here's your typefaces, here's your logos, here's your do's and don'ts, and all of that sort of stuff. But then, because we don't have any other assets at that point, we have to kind of fabricate a fake scenario going through of using them, of how we would use them and apply those rules that we just written as a templated example of what to move going forward. And that's really down to the design team now to follow them or come back if there's something they don't like or don't agree with. These are things that were agreed through the process. So, it's a standard branding project, but in terms of the process of, getting from A to Z, but there's a lot more heartfelt emotion in it, because with a lot of these kind of brand projects, if you go look at any big corporation and you look at the branding, they say the same buzzwords.
Yeah.
Oh, we're authentic, and things like that. Well, you show me you're authentic. Show me you're passionate. Well, with this, I think what we did was, when we put together some of those design principles and the words of what we are, they actually really meant something. They had some vibrancy to them, and they really connected well with what we were trying to put together.
I see Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, so you've got the brand narrative up at the moment, which I've got a few stories about this.
Oh, I want to hear stories. What do you got, Rob? You wanted to ask Mark a question, Rob?
Well, I was going to say, I see part of the explainer was simplifying to Cosmos rather than New York, and I was curious if that was a story, but it sounds like you have some of your own.
Well, not in terms of that. I mean, that was something that was put on the table. Let's just be straight about a lot of this stuff that people discuss on the boards was on the table. We were talking about it before they were saying things. It's almost like they don't think we have those conversations, and we go off into a silo in a vacuum and do these things. We don't. We have very long conversations. It's a very long process, and it has a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people involved. And so we have to listen to everybody, and then we have to collate and to disseminate the information that comes in and try to streamline it into a way that articulates most of the points of view. So the one thing with this, I personally have an absolute disdain for brand narratives. Right? Especially with soccer crests. It's a shield, strength and forthrightness.
Right.
Whatever. It's a shield. It's a soccer kit. It's a badge. Oh, yeah. This line through the middle indicates the two halves of the personality, the logical and the emotional. Bollocks. Right.
We've had a lot of that on this show, Mark, because we've a lot of new clubs in American soccer, and they're all doing it. This is the river, that kind of thing.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, you see a lot of this online with the concept artists, and they're following what they've seen without really understanding where that kind of comes from. So this was kind of done very much kind of tongue in cheek, as not disrespectfully, but like, Richard Navy, it just prints better. Do I need a better, thing than to say than that? Why have you changed the Navy? Well, it just looks better. It prints better. Right. So people were online to say that this sounds like really bland. This is just like the worst kind of narrative. It's like, what do you want me to do? It's the Cosmos logo. Right. It already has meaning. Yeah, I'm not changing the meaning of it. Yeah. What I'm changing is the execution. So, the one thing that we did do is we removed the outer border from the shield because we didn't want a wall around it. And that seemed to get lost on people. They were taking the proverbial out of that online. of some of those things. But again, it's done with reverence, but also there is a thing about it where it's like, why do I need to justify the navy when it prints better? The yellow and the blue kind of relate to Passaic and New Jersey, but the yellow and the green ties back to Brazil and Pele back in the day. The fans actually come from the Atlantic logo because of the brothers that founded the Cosmos, right? So these things are already there. I'm not reinventing the wheel for those, and I'm not changing them. But we did change the execution. We sort of sharpened up the angles. We did have conversations about the star ball because of
I was going to ask about the ball, because that's an iconic NASL image that you're carrying forward into a modern era.
Well, what we did was obviously we've got the UEFA conflict now with the star ball there as well.
Yeah.
So the old NASL, and we wanted to retain at least some personality of that, just to look back. So we just retained the single star in the middle. That was it really for that. But we got rid of all of the lines. It's if it's going to be embroidered, it's got to look good. And some of those old ones, you're going to end up with an embroidery patch about this thick. We've got all these new techniques now, like the tatami that we've used with the silicone on the shirt. So, understanding those techniques of manufacture, understanding the digital first, understanding where this has come from, understanding the roadmap for where it's going. I mean, these are all part of the process.
Yeah. So your job, it seems like you're a modernizer of the look more than anything. Like you said, you're not reinventing the wheel, but you're bringing up to the modern era. And so what are the in design terms, what are the tenets of modernizing?
Well, I hate to use the phrase because we're now got a movement trying to back away from it, but digital first, that's where all your engagement is happening. So your logo's got to work at 150 by 150 pixels. If you've got something that's a very, very convoluted coat of arms, it just doesn't work. And then you have to have reduced versions, and then you got 3 or 4 versions of the same logo that you have to use and we don't want that. You just want the one version. You've got a reverse outwert, a monochrome version, and you've got a color version, and that's it. Light background, dark background. We don't need any more than that. Well, let's not overcomplicate things, because sometimes this is going to end up on someone's desk who doesn't have a huge amount of design training and has to use it. The first thing I said when we released the logo was, it's already being misused.
Designer's worst nightmare, eh?
Oh, that's terrible.
On podcasts and things, people were removing the white border.
Okay. All right.
Jason, you didn't do that, did you, Jason?
I hope I did not. I did use the logo for, talking about things dropping. Hopefully I didn't do that, Mark. So, if I did, I apologize.
No, you didn't. You didn't. But I think what people were doing were picking it up off the ones that had a white background, just doing a remove background in Photoshop, and not realizing that there was actually a border around it.
Right. And then that is a hazard these days, because everybody's using that technology to clean things up. So absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, all the more reason for these things to be available somewhere, either on the club's website or something, so we can, download the clean version and use it. And I'm not a design person. I'm just like trying to make something decent for us. I know we could talk about the logo for a while, but again, I think bringing you on to talk about kits is really the story here that we wanted to get to, because there is now a jersey that people can buy that has the new logo on it. So
yes,
you sent me over these images, and this is the story, I guess. Hopefully I have them in the order you gave them to me in, and we can walk through this, Mark.
Okay, so there is hundreds more of these. Right? But we've got to be careful what we show, because there is elements in the others that we have which will give away what's going to happen in the away and the third shirt.
Ooh.
So there's little elements here which are just alluding to what's coming. But one of the first things when we sat down around the table was, what is a Cosmos shirt? Right? So if you look back to what happened between 2012, 2020, the Inaria, the Under Armour and stuff, I like those shirts, but to me, they never ever felt like Cosmos. For me, the Cosmos is going back to 74, 75, those
Right.
eras,
Yeah.
and looking at those. And so, you know, it's a green shirt with a white collar or a white shirt with a green collar. What can we do with that with the modern, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Demand for things to be completely different and wild. And so we started off with the white shirt, which is the original kind of home shirt. And we started bringing in some of the other colors and seeing how they would work. So it started with a white shirt, and then we started layering stuff on. One of the things we were talking very much about was, what can we have that's architecture that's ownable? What is no one else using right now? And I think we kind of got there in the end. But it'll be more prevalent in the away and the third jerseys where that will come into play. But but on the current jersey, the architecture is already laid out there for it to be followed.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question about because again, you sent me these and you said they were in this order, and you said it started with a white shirt. That's obviously a fairly, again, I guess it is kind of a mix, right? There were white shirts in the Pele Beckenbauer era, and they did have a sort of specific Cosmos look. So your inclination immediately was to maybe try to go white. I mean, I just the thinking around white first rather than green first.
Well, we went to green first after that. We looked at the white and we decided no, because too many other teams are using white as part of it. So we went from the white, and then we looked at navy, and we started to bring green in. And we're looking at very traditional stuff, pinstripes, sashes. We didn't go with a sash because LA Galaxy kind of owned the sash, right? In terms of the kit design, I don't think anyone's really done pinstripes in the American landscape recently. So that was something we were looking at on the table, and that is kind of what springboarded into where we ended up. But we were looking at some kind of ownable architecture. So when we got to this point, we just said, look, this is what we're looking at. So we're looking at the 73 to 75 home and the 75 to 76 away. What can we do with those two designs to come up with something? And, working with Capelli, I mean, I'd already done these as part of the brand process. So then when Capelli were brought in, I shared what I had. They shared what they'd done, and we kind of melded in the middle. So we went to some 80s kind of stuff. And again, it felt a little bit too much like what had been done in the 2010 to 2020 era. So they were discarded. And then we looked at some things that, maybe the checkboard is something we could use as an ownable device, and we discarded that. And we went through umpteen rounds of designs to get to something that we kind of liked. And then we kind of happened upon these. And that's where it kind of stemmed from. So right back at the beginning, we were using gradients. The idea of a shooting star kind of thing was the gradient. I've done some space shirts in the past, and I've used gradients quite nicely on them to illustrate movement and things. So the gradient became something that we carried through. The pinstripes was something everybody liked, but it was pinstripes. So how could we take that? So we turned it into a tonal stripe. And then we looked at the gradients of how they interact with the green itself. We looked at inverting them so that there was no conflict on the logos. We looked at doing the two on the outside going in the opposite direction. We looked at halftones. We looked at hard edge graphic. We looked at straightforward gradient, which is the one on the left, which is what we went with in the end. And that's where we ended up to where we got to. I put the sponsor on it because we don't have a sponsor yet, so just putting that on to give an idea of the breaking up of the green in the center, because most shirts are never meant to be seen without a sponsor.
Yeah, it's odd these days to see anybody without a sponsor. I mean, those Chelsea shirts look boring because there's no sponsor on them. But at the same time, like there's a purity to it, I imagine, from a design standpoint.
There is. It makes it a little harder, but as with all kits, you rise and fall on how good your sponsor can be. You have a crap looking sponsor, your shirt's not going to look good.
It's a good point.
You know, we went through it with the union for years, battling to not have that big bimbo patch before they reneged and went with the cutout individual letters, and they allowed them to be in single, the monochrome or in a silver or a gold, depending on the application, and that made the shirts 10 times better in terms of integrating the sponsor with the actual design of the shirt. So the funny thing was, when this was released, reading the comments, I don't know why I do it, but I have to.
Glutton for punishment.
I mean, well, you want to see how things have been received, but of course, no one's in the boardrooms when these conversations are taking place, and I see it all the time on the brand websites.
Well, there's also a selection bias, Mark, because the people who comment don't always represent the general public.
That's true.
That's what that is.
I saw a great comment. I wish I could remember it. That someone said about Twitter the other day. What was it they said? The pure concentration of the foolish. And I was like, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And the thing is, were these naysayers always out there? Probably, but they didn't have a channel to be able to put it out there. It's like, now everyone's going to hear me.
Now, obviously, again, this is a different challenge because of the history of the club, and you're building on something. You're not starting from scratch. But I try to give as much grace as I can, being a reactive soccer fan, when I see a logo or a kit drop and it's just, that's boring, or they did too much, right? Because I know you're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to find the perfect thing that's just like, oh, it's brilliant. And so you're trying to be true to whatever your remit is. And obviously in this case, your remit is to honor the Cosmos brand. So I'm interested to see the third and the away, since you're dropping some hints for us here.
Yeah. I mean, as I said in one of the conversations I had with someone, we're not forward medicine. We don't have pink flamingos. We don't have those wild shirts. That's not the Cosmos. If we'd have done that, Cosmos purists would have been, why haven't we just gone with a plain green? The irony was, when this dropped and people were, I was reading the comments about it, Admiral dropped a legacy collection with a plain green shirt and a white collar, and everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. And you're just like, what's this? It's exactly, we put some other stuff into it, obviously, but I personally really like it, but I know what it represents, and I know where it's come from, and I know where it's going. And it's very hard to stay quiet about those things, because it's like, well, I know, sort of thing. And but that's not my position to be able to, it's not my right to be able to do that, to go in and say these things. And so it's very difficult trying to keep especially with some of the other things that have been happening around the Cosmos rebrand, which I've seen on one of your other shows. And that was fraught while all this was going on.
So there's 54 days until the Cosmos kickoff. When do you think that these other secondary and third looks might come available?
I would probably, I honestly don't know. I would have thought they would be coming out somewhere around about February or March, or at least be released to be shown.
Right. Okay.
We were prototyping them. I stepped away when my contract finished, which would have been in November when all of this was done. I wasn't involved with the logistics or the manufacture of these. Just the design,
which we know was part of the reason they came out when they dropped, was, and when we talked to Eric about some of these things and sort of that process too. I mean, that's actually making them or actually getting to a point where you can sell them is different than designing them, clearly.
Yeah. And, I have my own kit manufacturing business on a much more smaller level than Capelli. I mean, we were both at the US Soccer Conference convention this week. They had a 40 by 40 booth. I had a 10 by 10.
Sorry to get to come by and see you, Mark. I love that place. It's one of the weirdest places in the world, the exhibition hall at the coaches convention.
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. I mean, my personal brain got really good feedback, but I learned a lot about what we're doing and what people are responding to. And it's funny because when you look at the list of the top 10 shirts this year, they're all really, really plain. They've gone for classic, and then it becomes a question of tension between materials, construction, and all of those different juxtapositions that aren't a graphic. And that's what makes those shirts so special in terms of the ones that are, it's the attention to the filigree on the patch, or, a little something that happens on the collar. It's those small attentions to detail that make things memorable. Like for me, one of the things that I was kind of blown away by was the Brazil shirt for the World Cup, that when you took it off the button, it made a little Brazilian flag with the button being the planet.
Oh, wow.
So there's little moments of joy like that are hidden within shirts. And it's those things that become memorable, and it's those things that make them desirable. And there's so many different techniques. You got the debossing, you've got the jacquard patterns that go in there, and it doesn't have to be in your face, but it's when you pick it up and you feel it and you get that tangible quality, and it's right there in front of you. And that's why the Liverpool green shirt this year has just gone down gangbusters, because it's just a green shirt. But when you get the authentic and you look at how those stripes are done with the pinholes, they're not printed stripes, they're just pinholes in certain sections of the material. And you're just like, that's makes it worth getting the authentic.
Yeah, those are some very nice little touches, very detail oriented. And that's one of the things that we love about kits, is like there's so many different angles to view it, from up and close into your hands. What does it look like when you're in the stadium? And what does it look like when you're on television in the broadcast view? There's all different ways to perceive these kits and ways to view them. There's a little bit of a tangent, but you're like these details and hidden things. What did you think of it when the Las Vegas Lights had the emoji on the inside of the shirt?
Oh, I have that shirt. I don't know. Do you know that shirt, Mark? They had
not particularly.
Do you remember? I can't remember which Spanish club it was. They did.
I thought it was Las Vegas Lights.
Well, no, it was. I'm telling a different story, Rob. Let me get to that. So there was a Spanish club years ago that had Burger King as a sponsor. And what they did is they printed the face of the Burger King on the inside of the shirt. So when the players celebrated, they could lift their shirt up over their face and it would be the King's face. So the Las Vegas Lights did something like that a couple years ago, which is what Rob is talking about, I think.
Right. I've seen the ones where they do that and it becomes like a ninja thing. It's a gimmick, innit? It's a gimmick. It's more about, those little. Yeah, there you go.
That's the Las Vegas Lights that Rob was talking about. They did some weird stuff. So
I was on the Charlie stand at the convention this weekend, looking at the Oakland Roots stuff, and they did a really nice job on those. The detail on them and stuff, especially on that the third kit? It's kind of like the bronzy greeny. It's kind of the muted colors.
I have a couple of Oaklands. I don't have that one, but yeah, they do a great job. They do a great job.
So it was interesting going around talking to people from Kelm, talking to people from obviously Capelli, because I know them now. Talking to people from, there was another brand there that I've never heard of before that had the biggest stand, called Artin. Aretyn. And all of the staff looked like models, male and female models, and they were all dressed in like light gray and white, and the stand was white, and they had white sofas, and they haven't done cross country, obviously, because that's not gonna last well, because they got people running.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was my first time doing it.
I didn't know about your brand. I went over to your design website and found your brand, your shirt brand. So I might look into that. So Mark, great story. I mean, I don't know, Rob, is there anything else we want to ask Mark, or we've gotten a lot out of him today?
Yeah. Thank you so much for breaking it down. Okay. So just a simple wrap up. How long did the whole process take to design these shirts, and how many prototypes did you go through to get to that final one?
Well, the whole process of because I look at it as a project. I was brought on in May last year, The brand was released in July. I think I signed my contract early May. The brand was released July. Was it June 10th? July 10th? It was a very quick process with the brand side, just the
Right.
logo.
Yeah.
And then the rest of there's another part of the execution side, the creative expression side of the branding. And that's when the kits started to kind of happen at the same time. So I would say the kits probably a lot faster than it is with Adidas. When I worked with Adidas, it was 18 months, but we were doing these within 6. And prototypes were within, probably the first prototypes were coming in after 3 months, maybe 4 months. It was a much more expedited process, but I was working with MLS. I was on the Philadelphia Union by You crew that did the blue and yellow lightning shirt.
I got that too.
Well, that was a process where we got to see behind Adidas's doors.
Sure.
That's the one.
This is the one. This is a great shirt.
Yeah, that's a beautiful shirt. And thank you for the explanation and breaking it down. Love to see all the alternate arts and the process that you went through. So Mark Jenkinson, working with Capelli, and your design company is Lime Pickle. And I suggest everyone check out those designs.
Bastion's where he's making the kits. So go get your custom made kits from Bastion.
We do a lot of supporters groups. So
there you go. That's
all right.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Mark,
right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mark. 54 days until the Cosmos will walk on out to their home field for their new season in 2026.